Hey everybody, welcome to another one of these videos that I clearly forget to do sometimes, like last month, where I talk about the books that I read and the books that I plan to read. I also have a couple of viewing recommendations for you because, as you know, I'm a massive movie fan, even though I don't talk about it often, but I'm sure you're okay with it because if you're here, you love storytelling in general, regardless of the medium. All right, well, let's get into it. What did I read last month? Well, the first book I read was a recommendation from some Okie dude, and no, that is not a derogatory statement or term. He refers to himself as that here on YouTube. He's my friend Britton. I asked all of you out there to recommend me some science fiction novels because I felt I was neglecting the genre, and this was one of those. And it is titled Light. It is part of the Kefauchi Kefauchi track by M. John Harrison. Didn't like this book. It was kind of a train wreck, kind of a disaster. And you may be asking yourself right now, well, why did he continue with this? Why didn't you just make a quitting video? Well, because I made it past 40 pages, and that was the Kindle sample. And I've tried to make a not a New Year's resolution, but a new month resolution to stop buying Kindle books blindly with just reading the description. Read the samples, right? Make sure you're going to like the prose, the story. So that's what I did. And ironically enough, the author hooked me for the first 40 or 50 pages, the first 10% of the novel. And then it just kind of went downhill from there. It was really difficult to finish this book. It felt like it was, I don't even know what it was about. And that's the struggle I'm having right now is I was thinking about doing a review, at least a public service announcement, a warning to those of you out there who might see this book cover and be intrigued by the white cat and the weird dice that are on it. I don't really know how to explain it. It's a 3 POV science fiction story that is sort of has its foundation in quantum physics. Allegedly, it's about this guy who's also a murderer, and he's doing some kind of experiment, and then there's a woman that's in a spaceship trying to find somebody, but she's kind of also a spaceship, I guess. And then there's this guy named Ed Chinese, and he's a twink, and which made me laugh all the time because that's a slang term for, well, I don't want to get in trouble on YouTube, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about out there. I don't think he's that kind of twink anyway. Hopefully me saying the word isn't going to get me flagged. Yeah, it wasn't a story. It was a non-story in the worst possible way. But I'll give John Harrison or M. John Harrison credit. He's a great writer. Prose stylist, I should say, because that's what hooked me, as I mentioned. That's really all there is, I think, to enjoy about this book, but it can't carry the whole novel. I mean, I barely made it through this. It took me longer than I'd like to read a book, but I don't know why I powered through. I kind of feel like I should have quit. Actually, I remember why I powered through. I was reading the Amazon reviews, and somebody said, if you're patient, or requires patience, and if you stick with it, it really pays off in the end. And so that got me thinking, all this nonsense, all of this stuff that really makes no sense, all of these scenes that really kind of seem to go nowhere and are kind of just scattershot are going to amount to something. Well, it didn't amount to anything, at least to me. Maybe I missed it because when I'm kind of bored with a book or frustrated with a book, I think I kind of speed read a little bit and I probably missed some details. But if you've read Light and you're not some okie dude, because I've already talked to him about it briefly, let me know in the comments what the hell this thing is about. Maybe I'll do a weird review. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But the next book I read was Prophet Song by Paul Lynch, which is a near future dystopian novel about a tyrannical government rising up to oppress all of society. And I have a review, so I'll link it up here. I just released it a few days ago. There's things I really liked about it, and there's things that I didn't like about it. I love the atmosphere. The prose, for the most part, was beautiful. But really what killed it for me was the way the writing was. The prose was presented to me, and that there were no paragraphs, so no line breaks. There were just these really big sing breaks. That's all there was. So it was draining for me to read because I'm a visual person. I have a background in graphic design. Layout is very important to me, and when you feed me blocks and blocks of text without interruption, it's a shitty experience for me. So anyway, I get far more into it in the review, so if you're curious about my thoughts on Prophet Song by Paul Lynch, check out the card up above. Now, the last book I read, I know, only 3 books, not that many for me. The last book I read was another one of your recommendations. Actually, it won the poll, but fear not, I'm going to read, well, I'll get to that. So what it is The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. So I read The Name of the Wind back when it first came out in like 2006, 2007. I still have the first edition hardcover, which is kind of exciting, I guess, even though I kind of wasn't really into the story that much. It was okay. I remember there being a lot of hype around it at the time. Now, Grant, this is way before he blew way the hell up, but still there was a lot of buzz going around, and I read it. I found it kind of meandered a lot. I found it a little boring, but I got through it. Maybe I should revisit it because I really enjoyed The Slow Regard of Silent Things. I'm going to do a review on it here because now I knew what I was getting myself into. Because, well, anybody who reads this book, at least reads the introduction by the author, knows that this is not a normal story. And this is kind of going against all the things I criticize novelists for, even myself. And that is adhering to structure, always having conflict, characterization, scenes that motivate other scenes, et cetera, et cetera. The craft of writing, right? The rules, the quote unquote rules of writing fiction. This one breaks all of those. Well, most of them. I'm going to break it down in my review because he does a lot of really, really cool things in the book that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to because, you know, because I'm a writer, I really pay attention to what other writers are doing because it's always a learning experience for me. If you're not a writer, it's more of entertainment for you for the most part. I paid a lot of attention to this one, and it's been so long since I've been away from any of his work. I never read the second book either, Wise Man's Fear. I really appreciated a lot of things he was doing because I don't know. I mean, I think structure exists for a reason and sort of expectations around what a story should and shouldn't be. They're there for a reason, right? They're the tried and true ways to get someone to finish your story or your novel, whatever it is. When you break those things, you're putting roadblocks in the way of someone's enjoyment because we're all so wired to follow these kind of structures anyway, loosely, I should say. But I think it's important to break structure, right? Just like Paul Lynch did in his novel when he broke the rules of grammar very, very often, and many writers do. That allows fiction to evolve into something interesting. So we're not just sort of the same story beats over and over and over again. But yeah, let me know if you read The Slow Regard of Silent Things, and let me know what you thought about it. And like I said, I'm going to work on a review. It's going to be a little bit different though, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. You'll have to just wait and see. All right, I have a movie recommendation for you, and don't worry, there's just one, and that is a movie that I highly urge you to go see. It's still out in the theater. It's Civil War by Alex Garland, one of my favorite filmmakers, screenwriters of all time, and so I'm a little biased, of course. And I'm also going to work on a video for that one because it's kind of like The Last of Us, where the TV show, where I wasn't going to make that video either, and it kind of blew up. It was a way for me to articulate why it wasn't good, why it was a failure in visual storytelling, as the title says. And often I'm kind of inspired to make these kinds of videos, even though they're not about books, it's about storytelling, and I care about storytelling. Because either somebody doesn't understand why something is bad or doesn't understand why something is good. In the case of Civil War, there's been a lot of critics out there that have panned this novel, thought it was incomplete, thought it was trying to explore things unsuccessfully, where I completely disagree. Not that Alex Garland needs me in his corner of the ring to be an apologist for his work or anything like that, but I feel it needs to be said because there's plenty of critics out there who are criticizing it and I feel like they're not getting it. They're not getting what he's trying to do. And my biggest thing is, yes, totally, you don't have to like everything, of course. Regardless, you need to understand the intent of the writer or the screenwriter, the director, whatever it might be, because that's the key. If you critique something and your critique is completely built on the thesis that failed to recognize what this person was trying to do story-wise, I think the critique utterly fails. And seeing the trailer, I felt a lot of what I think a lot of people had expectations for. But once I got into the theater and started seeing what he was doing, I was like, holy shit, you are a smart son of a bitch, man. And clearly a lot of people didn't get it. So at the very least, I hope this will help people out there understand at least my perspective and what I think Alex Garland is trying to do. And spoiler alert, he's been on plenty of interviews where he answers all of these questions that the critics were criticizing him for not answering in the movie when they're pretty clearly there. But anyway, the second thing that I'm enjoying right now on TV, well, on streaming services, is Fallout on Amazon. This is actually only the second Amazon show that I've ever been able to stomach. The first one was Tales from the Loop, which was a great sci-fi anthology series that I don't think many people watched. But Fallout, I'm pleasantly surprised. I thought I was going to hate it. I really enjoy it. I'm about halfway through it. It's an incredible adaptation from the game. They're very true. It doesn't feel like they're purely doing fan service. They're creating their own story within the world. And I think really that's a big part of why it works, is that when you have something like The Last of Us and you cast certain people in these roles, these beloved characters, and they don't quite fit that role, people are going to get upset. Whereas in Fallout, there is no protagonist. I mean, you are the protagonist, but you're a generic person, right? You make the person in the beginning of the game. So that allowed the writers, I guess, a lot of freedom to kind of craft this narrative within this sandbox. So if you got Amazon, highly recommend it. Go check it out. All right, let's get into the books I'm going to read. The first book I'm going to read this month is titled Project Ventus, and it is by Kieran Westwood. He's a YouTuber, clearly, also a writer, and he has an editing service as well. But I was really anxious for this one. I read his book, Gold Fury, a year or two ago, something like that. I really enjoyed it. And I think he was planning on going the traditional publishing route. And then finally, I guess he just said, screw it. I want to put my work out there. I think it's so much better to get your work out there than sit on it. And if a publisher never picks it up, it's never going to see the light of day. So it's a science fiction book. It's a multi-POV book. Clearly, that's why it's part of the reason why it's so thick. It takes place in 1986. In the 80s. Havana, 1986. People spill out of a hotel in the middle of the night, bleeding from the ears and nose. Very cool prologue. I've already read that part. Lights come on, up and down the street. There are sirens. There are phone calls. Project Ventus is out in the open. 3 teams, 3 research bases, the same creeping feeling. They have no idea what the project really is. So, sounds really cool. I'm excited to get into it. Go check it out. I'll put a link down below. All right, the second book I'm going to read is by Gabino Iglesias. And this was actually gifted to me. I actually won it in a giveaway. It's called The Devil Takes You Home, which is a very cool title, very cool cover. I don't really know what it's about, but I really wanted to read it. Why? Well, this was gifted to me, as I mentioned, by some Okie dude, Britain here on YouTube, and he hates this book. If you've ever watched his channel, you'll know that he's a pretty forgiving reader. He's critical, but he seems to always find something that he can enjoy about a book. This book, however, he did not like, so I'm incredibly interested to see why he didn't like it so much. Maybe if he's up for it, I'll bring him on the channel and we'll have a discussion about it, if he remembers. If he has not washed the memory from his mind anyway. I don't really know what it's about. Let me read a little snippet here. Buried in debt due to this young daughter's illness, his marriage on the brink, Mario reluctantly takes a job as a hitman, surprising himself in his proclivity for violence. Okay, so it sounds like a man down on his luck and he turns to crime. You know, it's weird, man, because this sounds cool to me. The title's cool. Like I said, the cover's cool. The vibe's cool. I read a little bit of the prose. The prose sounds good. But so I'm really curious to see why this thing sucks. All right, the last book I have planned to read is The Invincible by Stanislaw Lem, which was another recommendation for you guys out there. It actually just barely lost to the slow regard of Silent Things on the poll. So I'm going to get to that one. And that's really all I have planned. So what I would love for you guys to do, and I think I might make this a tradition because you guys are always sending me awesome recommendations and I really appreciate it. And it forces me to read things that I might not pick on my own. I think I might have time for one more book. So that's only 3 books. One of them is very short. One of them's pretty long. But if I can get to a 4th one, let me know down in the comments below. Is there a book that you'd really want to get my opinion on, me to put out a review for? And what I'll do is I will see whichever comment gets the most upvotes. Maybe do a poll if it gets ridiculous. Because last time you guys out there made me read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Ha ha ha. I'm still feeling the after effects of that one. But that's it for me. Let me know what you're reading this month. What did you read last month? Any good stuff out there that I am unaware of? And I look forward to your recommendations and your liking of those recommendations down in the comments below, because let's see what book 4 brings. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.